Van harte welkom vanmiddag bij de presentatie van Unseen. I all welcome you here in Pakhuis de Zwijger for the presentation of my book Unseen. It's about Cambodia, as you know, and Cambodia is one of the countries that is maybe one of the poorest in the whole world. And I had a beautiful long-term project together with Van, and I met a lot of people. And today, Andrea van Pol, she will be here shortly and present us all to you at home. He will ask me questions so I can just answer and lean back. And well, I guess she's on her way. Welcome.
Hello, Elly.
Hi, welcome,
Hi.
Andrea.
Welcome, everybody, to this special launch of the book Unseen. This is the book.
That's the book.
Can everybody hear me?
Yeah.
So, we're going to introduce the guest, of course, Elly Valk, the creator of this, the photographer, documentary project. For the rest, Bill Morse, your former project manager at the Landmine Museum. Welcome,
Yes.
Bill.
Hello.
Hello. So, you live in Cambodia, don't you?
I do. I live in Siem Reap. I live about 10 minutes from Angkor Wat.
Okay. And what time is it now at your place? 7 p.m. or 6 p.m.?
6 p.m.
All right. All right. Luke Hunt, he's here as well. You're a freelance correspondent, Asia.
There I am, yes. And in Phnom Penh. So, not that far, but we're on the same time zone.
Yeah.
But it's 6:04.
Yeah. So welcome. We're going to talk about the book. But first, Elly, you wanted to show us something, a little film introducing. I think is the sound all right?
Sounds
is it close
all right.
enough? Okay.
Yeah.
So Elly, you wanted to show us something about the bombing. Can you introduce the film, or are we going to look at?
It's a time lapse of all bombings by American Army during 1965 and 1973, all unseen and unauthorized by Congress. And these countries in Southeast Asia are the most bombed countries in the world. You cannot imagine how many bombs have been falling. So we can start this time lapse. gives me the creeps every time again when I see this.
Yes, because, well, you're in, of course, into the. For me, as an outsider, you see, and every flash you see is bombing, bombing,
Yes,
bombing.
all bombing.
You see Vietnam, and then in the last fragrance of the film, it's more in Cambodia, eh?
Yeah,
And that's
it is.
also the unseen things.
It's all unseen. The bombings are not authorized by American Congress.
Also not in the
No.
Vietnam. But that's terrible. And of course, Bill and Luke knew. Also, I mean, people knew, although
Yeah, of course.
it's called unseen.
Yes,
Yeah.
it is unseen.
Yeah.
And still, people have been living under the rain cover of bombs. Can you imagine?
No.
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 Neither can I.
No.
Really not.
No.
If you see this landscape, it's all the American ponds. Like, all the bomb craters are still there.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll see that later because you took pictures of, and then American ponds are called, and that's
Yes.
and it looks for an outsider. Hey, that's a
And
nice
it's
pond.
very nice place.
Yes, yes.
But they are not.
They are not. And
No.
it's, you said we cannot count it. But are they counted? Because it's a
Yes.
total of 150,273 targets were bombs. It
Just
says
in
there.
Cambodia, yes.
And that's just in Cambodia.
Just in Cambodia.
And it's difficult to estimate the number of civilians that died as a result. And some say 50,000 and some say 600,000.
I don't know.
Bill, do you have any idea how many civilians are killed by these bombings?
We use the number 600,000.
Wow.
One of the American ambassadors came to the Landmine Museum one day, and he saw the table that we have, and he saw the presentation that we gave in the bombing, and he looked at it, and he looked at me and said, "That's the high number." And I said, "Yeah, it's the high number. Which number do you use?" So we don't know how many people died.
No.
We don't know how many are civilians. Body counts in Vietnam were simply that, body counts, and everybody killed was considered to be enemy. An entire territory area was considered unfriendly territory, so everyone who died was Viet Cong.
Yeah.
In Cambodia, everyone who was killed was considered part of the Ho Chi Minh Trail, or a supporter of the Ho Chi Minh Trail, a worker.
Because you were, what I read, already into the anti-war movement in the early 70s. So you knew already things are not going well there.
Yeah, I was a university student in the late 60s.
Yeah.
I was a commissioned officer in the United States Army. I did not go to Vietnam. I did a very short stint on active duty and I went out. But I became an anti-war activist in the late 60s. In 1968, I was in university, and a kid was sitting next to me, and we started to talk. And he had shown up late in the semester. I said, "Where you been?" And he said, "I was in Utapao Air Base in Thailand." And I said, "What were you doing there?" He said, "I was loading up airplanes to bomb Cambodia and Laos and Vietnam." So the secret bombing of Cambodia was no secret to the Cambodians or the Laotians or the Thais or the Vietnamese. It was a secret from the American public, kept by a lot of people. But no, there were people who knew what was going on, the extent of which we didn't know until the war ended.
Yeah, yeah. And what do you think about Elly Valk? I mean, so many years later, she's making this project. How important is that?
Oh, I think it has to be done. This can't be forgotten.
No.
The history we don't know is the history we forget. This has happened again, and it's going to happen again. And publishing this book is going to remind people that we can't allow this to happen. And when it does happen, we have a responsibility, a moral responsibility. All of us, not just the people who dropped the bombs, but the people who supported the continuation of that war until 1998 to clean up what they did.
Yeah, yeah. So, Eddie, I mean, you entered the Landmine Museum.
Yeah.
When was that for the first time?
The first time was in, I guess, November 2018 or 19. 19. And then we met. And I entered the Landmine Museum because I wanted to see a little bit more what Cambodians in their own country did about remembrance, or how do you recall all the horrors of 30 years of war?
Yeah.
How do you do that?
Yeah.
And they have a war museum in Siem Reap, and they have a landmine museum in Siem Reap. So I visited those places, and it's pretty bad. But at the landmine museum, especially with Bill, we met there, we talked, and then I just saw how he preserved history on the bombings. In the War Museum, on the other hand, it is like tiptoeing around. It's like tiptoeing around the bombings and American involvement in Cambodia.
Because nobody wants to know that the American did such a devastating things. Although,
well, why is always a big question,
Yeah.
and it is always very difficult to answer.
yeah,
Why? Why are people doing these things?
yeah,
Why?
yeah,
I don't have answers.
No.
So I just went looking for what do Cambodians preserve
Yeah.
about these horrible times.
because what I heard is that, and Bill, you know that as well, that this time these bombings are a little bit put away also in the Landmine Museum. There are a lot of things about later, of course, the killing fields, Pol Pot, the Khmer Rouge, but these facts are a little bit put aside. How did you?
Well, not so much in the Landmine Museum. I saw
More in the
pretty
worms.
much. They were in my face the minute I entered, and I was accompanied by Van, and Van was just horrified by the small videos they were showing
Yeah,
on bombings and fire, and he was horrified. And he of course, you keep up the good face
yeah,
and say, well, okay, I'm a man, so I can do things, but he was horrified.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So we'll now go to Van. Hey, Van is I didn't know if you call it Van or Van. Van. So you met him.
Yeah.
Because of him, you made this book and this whole project, and Luke and Bill are in it as well.
Yeah.
So how did you met him, and when did you think, hey, I'm going to make a project of this man?
Well, to make a long story short, I met him 9 years ago when he was our tuk-tuk driver in Phnom Penh on a long journey in Southeast Asia.
Yeah. First of all, why did you go to Cambodia? Then at those.
It's part of Southeast Asia, and we went to Laos and North and South Vietnam, and of course we wanted to visit Cambodia as well. And in the first place, I thought, well, of course, these beautiful Angkor Wat temples, they are amazing.
The culture.
The culture. Then it's Van who pulled me into all the violence of that country. I knew a little bit about Pol Pot. I knew about Vietnam War, but and then after the killing fields, we visited the killing fields. He was just sitting there and said, "Well, my family was bombed. 5 brothers and sisters were killed. Little kids were killed in the bombing." And I looked at him and said, "Huh? When was that?"
Yeah.
And he said, 1970. I was just born. And I just didn't know how to respond to that.
No.
Because most of it, when you visit for first time, it is about Pol Pot.
And that's a few years later, huh?
And a few years later, Pol Pot a few years later, 1975. And I worked with Van on a project to uplift his business. Didn't work out the way we wanted to, but still, we tried. And then I wanted to do a photography project, just a light-hearted one, not too difficult, not too intense. So I went back to Cambodia and asked him if he would like to work with me on a book about his life.
Yeah,
Van-
so he's the protagonist of yeah. So that's what it started. A little bit like a tuk-tuk driver Van,
Yes.
with of course a history, but
And then we started to work, and he was very servitude. His servitude was great. He was showing me places. He took me to the market, took me to schools, whatever. And then he took me to the village where he was born. And I already had met his mom before, and his sisters. And then he took me to the village. And they expected me to make photos, but you cannot make photos. The minute you come in, you cannot make photos. I can't.
no.
I just have to see and wait and talk and know what people are doing. And so we walked around the village, and the next day we came back, and then I felt more at ease, and they felt more at ease. And this is fun. Let me introduce him.
I see in his eyes a lot of grief.
Yes, it is.
It's a good picture. Of course, I think most of the time he probably is smiling. I don't know, but you captured this, huh? Or was this most of the time his expression?
No, it's not most of the time. It's like when he is not in contact.
Yeah.
He's like this. He's just introvert.
Yeah.
And in himself.
Yeah.
And
so you took this picture, of course, when you later on when you met and told the story, and then he told the story of his place where he was born, where the children were playing in the fields and they were bombed.
Well, we were at the village with his mom and his sisters, his younger sister, and they went into the kitchen, and I followed them into the kitchen. This is Kunan, mother, and we chatted as women. It is just comforting to be in some kind of a company of women in a kitchen. I like to cook, so and I like to make photos, so they let me just do whatever I wanted to do.
And did she speak English, or what language did you communicate?
I speak English, and Van speaks English.
So he was the translator.
Yeah, he was. Yeah. So he followed me everywhere I went.
Yeah.
And then I left the kitchen, and she followed me. Kunan followed me. And then she talked to Van and said, well, come. And he followed her. And she sat down in her, what is it? I don't know how you call it in English. It's hangmat. Jongens, hangmat.
Oh ja.
Hammock.
Hangmat?
Hangmat.
Bill, how
hammock.
you call it? You know, a
hammock.
thing where you hang in, where you lay in.
Hammock.
Oh yeah,
Hammock.
hammock.
Yes.
Hammock.
Yeah. Thank you, Bill.
Thank you, Bill, for translating from Cambodia.
So here she's sitting in a hammock.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And then she said, I want to talk. And she started to talk. Just started to talk. She looked at me with the camera. I made one picture of her and I said, well, that's a good one. And then she turned inside herself and she looked like this. She talked to her son. And they went back to that awful day, January 13, 1970. And she talked about how she lost 5 small children. And
in just, one day, huh?
In just, let's say, 2 of them were almost killed.
Immediately?
Instantly. 2 died within a day. And a 5th one died 3 months later. All because of these bombings.
And they knew immediately that there were U.S. bombings, or was it?
Well,
could it also be?
No, the U.S. bombings.
Okay.
Yeah.
So she took you back to this tragic day,
Yes.
although it was almost 50 years later.
It
huh?
was 50
So
years
it was
later,
such a trauma, a big trauma.
big trauma. Yes.
And
then we just then he just said, well, this is what my life is about. Okay. And then he said, okay, this is what my life is about. Let me show what my life was about.
yeah,
And then we went to Nice, where he lived when he went back to school after Khmer Rouge. We went back to his old school, and then he opened up. Before that, when we were in Phnom Penh, he was just, well,
the driver,
driver,
to a tourist of sort,
whatever.
friendly way.
Yeah, very friendly. But now he was opening up and telling me a whole bunch of more stories about his life under horrific circumstances.
Yeah, and it is about 30 years in Warzone. Huh? Things sort of. I mean, I think for you, you slowly noticed like, well, this is not just only the Khmer Rouge, but this is it's such a long story of violence, of trauma, of things. Was there a moment that you thought, how can I cope this in one book, or what was your idea?
No.
By the way,
Well,
by the time Kunan told you the story, Van opened up.
Well, I went home early. The first tour in Cambodia, I went home early because I thought, well, who am I that I can record a story like this in a photo book?
Yeah.
I don't know.
No.
I have no idea.
No.
I go home. And then I just talked to myself and the photos I made and said, well, this bombing should be the heart of the book. This is Van's story. And that should be the heart of the book. But how, in heaven's sake, can you make photos of something that happened 30 years ago?
Yeah.
50 years ago? And I just didn't know. So it was a search for, how do you do that?
Yeah.
As
So how do you
photographer.
do that, Elly? Because you made the book.
I made, yes, finally made the book, yes. What I went back to on the second tour in November, the same November.
And did you speak then to Luke or Bill?
No, not to Luke, but to Bill. And he told me more about all these circumstances. And I had some kind of a plan. I never make plans when I go on a photo tour. I just wait and see, and then
What comes up to you?
what comes up to me. But now I have some kind of a plan. I wanted to show, to work with Van, to make, to show the bomb craters with him in it.
Okay.
And I guess there's a picture of it.
Can we?
Yeah, that's it. It's still 2 meters, 3 meters deep. He's sitting at the bottom of a bomb crater.
So you're standing. Yeah. Because it looks just like a nice picture. Because there are the banana plants, or what
Yes.
is it? And this is a crater.
This is a crater, yes. Their yard is full of craters.
Yeah.
Still is full.
So this could be the crater where his siblings are killed.
Probably. One of them.
Wow. And how did he respond? Because was it the first time you took him back to this?
Well,
Or more?
earlier he took me back to show this. But now I just pushed him
Yeah.
to make photos of him down there. And that he was hesitant. He was just like, oops, do I need to go down?
Yeah.
That's...
And why did you want him to be there? Because
it is like...
for a documentary photographer, you also then direct things, huh?
I do a little bit of directing, yes. And my kids call me a control freak, so anyhow. I wanted him down there because I wanted to show his response to it. what does it do to you when you go down there? Then you go back in time, and you have not seen the horrific thing.
No, because unseen is also, he was a baby.
He was a baby.
He was there physically, but he couldn't remember.
He couldn't remember. He had. He's still in shock when you hear bombings or you see a documentary in television. And
so it was in his body.
It is in his body, but not in his memory. But I just wanted to see how he was responding, and would he do that?
Yeah.
And could we work on what his feelings were in a time afterwards?
Yeah.
So that's why I put him in the bomb crater.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the next picture was, is it black and white? I mean, did you?
In the book you have the whole section is on the bombings in January 1970 is in black and white.
Yeah.
And because I think it is like black and white, and it when you look at green banana trees,
Yeah.
it looks nice and friendly.
Yeah.
And you can look at it, oh wow, nice.
Yeah. And
But just imagine that the kids saw planes flying over.
yeah, it's not an innocent landscape then.
It's not an innocent landscape. Not
So
at all.
this you took in black and white to bring back that time.
Yes.
I just want to ask Luke, because you're a journalist, huh? You're a freelance.
Yes.
This story that Elly is telling, huh, through one family or one person, this story, I can imagine that you as a journalist also told these stories in a certain way about these bombings.
Yes, but not always. I mean, there's been a lot of publications come out and books published and movies made about what happened here. Lots. But what I really liked about Elly's book is that it brings across that the suddenness of what happens to an individual in what's essentially a big geopolitical power play. And I thought that got borne home. I think that really came home quite strongly. And for someone like me, who's I've seen a few things, it was kind of nice to be, I mean that in a perverse way, but it was kind of nice to be reminded that, the individual, the person, the Joe Schmuck who'd been ploughing his fields and the family had been ploughing those fields for 1,000 years. And, they know how to fight. I mean, wars are not unique and they happen a lot. Mm-hmm. But it's sort of like be ploughing a field and all of a sudden there's an explosion on the ground. You don't hear the plane. You don't see the plane. You have no warning, but kaboom.
Yeah.
Something's gone off in the middle of your paddy field, and along that maybe went your daughter. I mean, it's nice to be sort of taken down to that level. And given that this happened, this happened, 2000, it happened, it's been a while. Yeah. And there's been a lot of other wars since. But
it's been a while, but you see that the family is still traumatized, huh? How long that...
Well, you've got second, third generation Cambodians now. There is an argument about PTSD being becoming a generational thing. I'm not convinced, but Cambodia, there are still issues. There's still a lot of landmines, which have nothing to do with the Americans, I might add. But the UXOs across the country, I mean, they've only got rid of about half. Yeah, I think. Yeah. Thereabouts that they encountered when UNTAC came in 1992. So there's still a lot to be kind of done out there, and it's, the legacies, it's been an extraordinary legacy that the Indo-China wars have kind of left with this country.
Yeah, yeah. Elly, I mean, that's it. We'll talk to Bill as well, but still the war is going on because there's so many, what Luke says, so many landmines are
still
there. Yeah. So you keep reminding, you said in the book somewhere, so an innocent foot or something has steps on thing and boom, and then it all comes back again. I mean,
yes, it is. then it all comes back
Yeah.
again.
Yeah. So when I spoke to you, you said I was inspired by Auschwitz.
Yeah.
Can you tell me again that story? Why you wanted to make a book like this, which tells the story about the people and not about? Can you tell it?
Yes, when we it is happening all the time. When you talk about war, you talk about bombings, and you talk about destruction, and you talk about the power structures that are engaged in a war. And of course, we have all listings of the people who died or got maimed or got murdered.
All those memorial
memorials. But when I visited Auschwitz, I saw in these Birkenau fields all kinds of little reminders of people. Small reminders, like a small photo of a woman, a man, a child, with some stones on it, as a reminder of this person died. This person was a person with a history.
Yeah.
They have lived. They lived lived for years. They had families. They made love. They
They
argue,
went to school.
whatever,
They had
went to school,
friends. And
whatever.
Yeah.
They are persons, and then in an instant they are gone. And when you go to the gas chambers, you see these large pictures with people sitting in front of the gas chambers where they will be murdered. And then I thought, well, we remember these people in a mass sitting here to be murdered. And these are all individuals, all people who died on a horrific way, in a horrific way. And these are people, these are families, these are people with a history. And we don't, when you remember, be reminded of reminiscence about the people that are not there anymore. You want to see a whole person.
Yeah. And not just the violent end.
And not the violent end, no. Because that's so that's a traumatizing.
And it's not complete, of course.
It's not complete, never. It's never complete.
So you wanted to make the persons vivid and the love and the friend things.
Yeah.
So maybe we have some more pictures, because it's nice to see how you created then this book. Because what you had a sort of this is a sort of ghost.
Just a ghost picture. Yes, I want to make a ghost picture.
And what do you mean by that?
It is like he is seen and he is not seen at all. We see people and we don't see them. And they have lost 8 children and a grandchild in total. And they are just remembered in the way they died. And it is difficult to talk about them.
Yeah.
So you don't see them.
No.
But they are there. They are always there. In a ghost-like way. So it's like, I'm not here, but I see you.
So you wanted to, the 8 siblings who died, you wanted to portray that in sort of in the nature around his body, but he's also incorporating that. That's beautiful. That's beautiful.
Yes.
Yeah. And also you had a first version.
Yes.
Because the book, now
book
we're
had some
sitting
impact.
here because of COVID, of course. Otherwise, you've been in Cambodia.
Yeah.
You had a first version, and you showed that in Cambodia to Van, and it made it a sort of, how you say that? It created.
Impact.
Yeah, it had an impact. Can you tell something about that? Because that was how long ago?
It was in May 2020. I went back, and I have made a book. This book I put in a black box, and that's the way I want to present it to the ambassador of the United States. It's not possible now, so maybe some other day. But with this book, let me see. It is still called Van's story. And it's just about the bombing, not about the rest of the wars they lived in. And I said to him, well, when I want to publish this book, a book like this, I need the other family members to agree that I do so.
Yeah.
So we went with the book to his older brother, the eldest one in the family,
Yeah.
Thorn. The man is 70, he's from 1950. And then they were just a little bit awkward towards one another. He didn't know, what a white lady, what is she doing here with my wife's business?
What's this Dutch lady here doing with our family, huh?
Not so much, just what this one with a white lady. He wants to show off.
Oh, okay,
That's like. And then he showed him the book, that first version of it. And then Thorn became very emotional. And I'm not used to seeing a Cambodian man be so emotional.
Show their emotions.
Show their emotions. And then he said, well, in Khmer, he just talked to me, and in Khmer, I didn't understand the word, but understood. You know, they were so small. The bombs were raining down on them.
Because he was
all
there.
The fire. Huh? He was 8 kilometers away. And at that minute, I thought, well, they looked at each other and found just that I didn't know. I didn't know what you tell me. I know my brothers and sisters were killed, but I don't know your side of the story.
Uh-huh.
So I took them to lunch, and they talked, and they talked, and they talked.
Yeah.
And he translated it a little bit, and little bits and pieces. But it was so intense.
Yeah. So it
opened up.
Yeah, it opened up because of you, a stranger from outside who maybe has a sort of fresh curiosity and empathy to make a story, and they open up. But then it had more. You had more family members, and you organized a sort of a mourning or a sort of funeral. How did that go?
His older sister in the village called him and said, "Well, you talked to my brother, to Thorn. I want to talk as well. I want to show."
Yeah.
So we went back to the village, and then we talked, and she showed us. And there's a picture as well, I guess. Yeah, here we're showing it. It's a daughter of...
These are grandchildren, probably from... Yeah.
Yeah, this is Van, and one of the grandchildren.
Yeah.
And they talked, and she showed me her wound still of the burning.
The older sister.
The older sister.
Because she was there. Yeah.
She was there. She was 8 years old.
Gosh, yeah.
And, well, and they drew in more people from the village, more family members. And then I don't understand anything anymore because they just talk Khmer.
Yeah.
And I walk around with the camera and say, well, okay, you talk. That's the left one. On the left is Rai, and that's her.
So that's the sister.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Rai
And the mother, of course. Yeah. Yeah. Yes. So you created something, huh? Something came up.
Yes.
Can also be difficult. I mean, you as a Dutch photographer or documentary photographer, hey, you open wounds. Maybe they want to close it. So how do they now? I mean, you created also a sort of mourning, huh? Or a sort of.
Yes.
Can you tell me something about it?
I can. I just decided at that moment that the book should be more about the family living in a war zone for 30 years.
Yeah.
Finally, the book like this, second edition, and I just wanted to thank the family for their openness.
Yes.
They opened up to me.
Yes.
They were inviting. They were nice. I ate at their table. I was served their food. So I wanted to do something back. And then I asked, well, would you like to have some kind of a plaquette with the names of all the children who died.
Yeah.
And then I said, yes, we want to.
This is it, huh?
And this is it. We made it. All the names are on it.
It's very, very impressive.
It is.
And mother, who lost so many children, how did she react with this plaquette, and what happened?
She is like, she's kind of a little bit opening up, a little bit. She's still hiding in herself, like, and you're not always sure what she's looking at. Is she looking for all the children in the yard, or just the children who are there? And here's the same. She is just like, oh, yeah. And she cannot read, so he has to point the names.
Yeah,
yes.
yeah. I just wanted to go back to Bill, because this is, you wanted to also to present this book, I think, in the Landmine Museum. Didn't you want to do that, or in the War Museum?
It would be nice to do it over
or
there.
have an exhibition there, huh? So that was the plan, wasn't it?
The plan was to have a very small exhibition in the Landmine Museum.
Yeah.
Just a few photos.
Yeah.
And in the Peace Museum, because Bill pushed me towards the Peace Museum and said, you have to go there.
Yeah.
I showed them your book. And
what's the Peace Museum like then?
The Peace Museum is about, how can... You can Bill.
So what's the Peace Museum? Sorry, I don't know.
I have not been to the Peace Museum yet.
But you pushed Elly to go there.
I did. I know the people who started it, and I know the whole idea of the Peace Museum is to remember what happened and carry it forward and make sure that it doesn't happen again. We've had a lot of tumultuous stuff going on at the Landmine Museum for the last 2 years, and then with COVID coming last year, it pretty much shut everything down. And we also support a demining team. We support some bomb squads. And we started a food distribution program about a year ago, and we're working very hard on that. So that's where most of our time has been spent.
Yeah.
But no, the Peace Museum, this needs to be there. It's when the tourists come back, it will draw a lot of tourists. There are people who come here specifically to see the history of the war, and they go to Chongek, and they go to the killing fields, and they go to Tul Slang, excuse me, I couldn't remember the name. They go to Tul Slang, and they come to Siem Reap, and they go to the killing fields in Siem Reap, and they come to the Landmine Museum. They go to the War Museum. They want to know what happened. There's not a lot of people talking about the history of the war, so they can get that history there. And then the Peace Museum and the Landmine Museum can remind them that this problem is a continuing one in Cambodia, and it's only going to be solved when we all get together and decide to clean up what's left.
That's what you're saying, eh? It's still going on, and it's only going to be solved to have everyone, in action to clean up the landmines, to also the recognition of all the mines who live there and what has happened.
It's everyone's responsibility.
Yeah. Elly wanted to, present the book to the ambassador of United States. What do you think, Bill? Will he or she accept a book like this? I mean, if it's so much put away in history, like what has happened there? What do you think?
I think it could be presented to the embassy. I think there's very little chance that the ambassador would make himself available to accept this.
Because this
is a part of American history that we don't want to talk about that. We want to talk about how we're helping to clean it up and to make the world better. But I don't think the American ambassador is going to make himself available to accept the book. I can try.
Yeah.
When I can get to Phnom Penh, when I can get out, when I can get a copy of the book. I do know the ambassador. I mean,
Wow.
most Americans over here, there's not that many Americans in Cambodia, so he does make himself available for meetings. So we've all met him.
Yeah.
And I know people who work for him, and I certainly can talk to them, but I don't think it's going to happen.
Yeah. Because it's a bit of, when we talk to Dutch history, it is a bit of the momentum of, like the Dutch king a few years ago said, has sort of sorry about Indonesian violent Dutch army against Indonesian population in their liberation struggle or war, and talking about the slavery history. So maybe it's a time that also the American. What do you think, Elly?
I don't think so. No.
Because now Biden is more.
I don't think so.
No.
They don't want to. No. I go with Bill. So.
Yeah. And Luke, what do you think? You're an Australian. What do you think? What is the importance of this book, and where should it be? Where should it be? Yeah, presented or donated, or what do you think?
Well, I mean, you can only ask the ambassador. He might say yes. A lot of them. I think people. It's not always about policy, and you get a lot of ambassadors. Yeah, they'll do it, and others will be like, no, they won't. You can only ask. Problem is COVID, and there lots of issues starting to arise now out of the lockdown, like internet connections and things like that. I think this has been fantastic, but in terms of launching, getting things in anywhere at the moment, it's almost impossible. But I'd be, it'll come out here, it'll get here. I'd be hitting the universities and places like in Siem Reap, the Centre for Khmer Studies, making sure it gets into all those libraries. The photography is fantastic. Yeah. I mean, you could even go with the photography schools as well. I think it's an extremely good essay in terms of telling a story, what it set out to do, and that's important. Elly's very good at what she does, so I'd be tackling that. But at the moment, it's kind of if you wanted a grand strategy on where to place a book and how to do it, good luck. If you pick anything up, tell me. Things are really difficult at the moment.
Well, last time I visited was 2020, and then I connected to the documentary center of Cambodia, and they really wanted the book, and they offered to translate it into Khmer and make it available to libraries and schools. It's not going to happen now.
No,
we're not going over, and it will take some time.
No, that's why we sit here.
We sit here in Amsterdam.
Yeah, it's too bad. You said it needs there. And on the other side, for me, as sort of that we know the Khmer Rouge, the killing fields, like you said, it's also good for us to be shaken up. Like there's so much we don't know, and here's this Dutch woman who just tells a story through one person or through one family, which stands for a war zone which still goes on.
Still goes on. Yes.
Why did you want to make this book?
I wanted to make this book because I think the book is set out as threat, like it's always war and violence, and the threat of losing loved ones. And there are a lot of dramas that keep us like this. Hold on and not talk.
Close.
We close up. But normal life has not so many attention. Like, I would love to know a little bit more about you and like talk about who you are, how love is doing this in our life.
Yeah.
How we grow and develop and connect and work together. And that's far more important than keeping an eye on the wars or the violence or what we can do. people are capable of everything.
Yeah.
The worst and the best.
Yeah.
And everything in between.
Yeah.
And that's why I wanted to make the book a setup like threat, drama, normal life.
Yeah. You have 3 lines which impressed me very much. It's impossible to forget. I don't know if you invented it yourself.
Yes,
oh,
it's
that was
mine. Yeah.
impossible to forget because it's so big. Difficult to remember because it is so grotesque. Probably, huh? It is.
Yeah.
And then important to share.
Yeah. That's it.
Bill, what do you think of these 3 lines? I found them very impressive, which shows how you.
I like them. I mean, what the book does is it humanizes the problem.
Yeah.
We talk about the war in Cambodia and the war in Vietnam, and we talk about it in the broad strokes, and we talk about Nixon and Kissinger and the carpet bombing. But this takes it to the ground. It takes it to one family and tells their story. The guy I work with is a man named Aki Ra. He was born in 1970. He was a child soldier. His family died during the war. And he said one time that we can't ever forget what happened. We have to remember what happened, but we have to move forward.
Exactly.
And make a better world make a better country out of Cambodia. And his job is making his country safe. And that's what we came over here to try to help do in our little way.
Yeah.
And that's what the book can do.
Yeah.
The book can humanize this problem, and it can remind people that it wasn't, yes, it was 600,000 people, but this family was decimated, and they are still decimated today. And the war goes on and haunts people every single day.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you, Bill. Just one final question. What is your motivation to work there and live there?
I met this guy. I had a friend of mine who asked me for $100 to buy a mine detector for a guy he had met in Cambodia who was clearing landmines with a stick and a screwdriver. I was, as I said, I was in the American Army. I was a peace activist. I was active in politics in the United States. So my wife and I were intrigued by his story. So we got on a plane and came to Cambodia looking for him. It cost him $500 a month to run his program. He had the Landmine Museum. He had a bunch of kids who lived there. He was clearing landmines by himself. So we started a small charity to support his work. Eventually, I came over to help him get licensed and certified by the government. And 1 year led to 2 years, led to 3 years. And my wife and I have been here for 14 years now. So there was never a conscious decision that we were going to sell everything we have and move to Cambodia. But we found ourselves over here and we looked at each other one day and said, we're not going back. This is our life now. This is better than sitting around the golf course,
Very good. What do you want to say to Elly for this book launch, to finish this hour?
I want to say thank you. And I want to encourage her to continue to push to get this book distributed. There are people, when the tourists come back to Cambodia, they'll buy this book. I have a friend who published a book on the history of Cambodia, and he brought it to Cambodia and he sold it in the hotels and the airports and stuff. And this book will sell. People are looking for stories. They're looking for the history of what happened recently, not just the Khmer Empire. And it will happen. This too shall pass, and we will get back to some semblance of normality, whether it be this year or next year.
Yeah.
This book can make a difference. That's the important thing. It can make a difference. Everybody who has this book on their table will be reminded that it's their responsibility, not someone else's.
Beautiful words. Luke, what do you want to say to Elly?
Good luck. I'm sure it'll go fine. I mean, you just got to wait things out a little bit with COVID, but try and get a distribution list going and perhaps think a little more out of the box about where you can get books in, that kind of thing. Problem is, I mean, there's a lot of bars here that double as bookshops, coffee shops, things like that, where you can get books in and you can actually maybe hit the type of market or the type of person, where tourists will go, that kind of thing.
And you have a platform as well, as a journalist. You have a platform as well. You're going to how say that? To promote it a little bit.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, no. Look, when you got to have copies with you. I mean, there's I'd be doing something with Haar in Siem Reap. That's not hard to do. I mean, just talk to Wayne McCullum there. There's lots of things that can be done in Phnom Penh, but it's like everything's closed.
Yeah,
everything's
it's true.
Gone.
Yeah,
it's closed. And it's really all about how we come out of the lockdown. Maybe in a couple of weeks, doubtful. Could be a couple of months. It could be a lot longer. You don't really know. And it's like I was saying, the internet's down before. The internet's really sludgy at the moment. But there was a storm here 3 days ago. A branch came off a big tree on 136. No one came to pick it up, so it gets scavenged.
Yeah.
In the meantime, that branch brought down a couple of wires. We don't know which ones. The people who can fix that are all up in the provinces, and they're not coming back tomorrow. You know what I mean?
I hear the sirens.
That's where the issues are at the moment.
Yeah, of course.
I think the priority should actually be to just get the books in country and have someone look after them. I mean, Will Bagley might be able to help out there. I think he offered to take it to Monument Books. Yeah. And I'd have a chat with them, but I mean, just get the books in country. You've got to have the product there on the shelves.
We're going to do that.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Luke, Bill, Elly. Beautiful words, from Bill and Luke, and
thank you.
Yeah, you're moved by the story, but
I'm moved. Yes.
Yeah, but I can imagine it's a long project. It's a very intense project. It is so much tears, but also joy in this book. And now we're going to have a lot of copies sent to Cambodia, and when the tourists come, they will really sell it buy it because it has, like Bill said, it makes a story human. It makes a story history on a certain way, very accessible.
Yes.
So I would congratulate you with this beautiful project, with this beautiful book.
Thank you.
And I would like to thank Bill and Luke again for being here. And hopefully you all three will meet again somewhere. I don't know where, Yeah, some in Cambodia. And stay safe and stay sound. And I don't know if anybody is already vaccinated by
whatever.
Hopefully soon.
Whatever.
Okay, thank you so much. And
thank you. Thank you, friends, for being here, for your support and connection.
Thank you, Elly.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
So that was it. And thank you all viewers. I don't know which for looking and buy the book. Of course. And Elly has her own website, ellyvalk.com.
Yep. It's coming up.
It's coming up. And thank you for this project again. Please. Support.
Contact me for any questions or remarks. Here you can find my contact.
Yeah, it's very easy to find. If
it's easy to find.
Google Elly Valk, immediately you're on your website.
Yeah.
Good luck.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.